no teams on a bye means it's going to be a busy Sunday in fantasy football. We're going to hit every game on Sunday within this hour on the show, starting with the most historic rivalry in the sport, Bears, Packers. Marcus, who are you starting in this one?
I'm saying to start David Montgomery. Now, if we're going with Adam Rank's Varsity Blues analogy, this would make him Wendell, which means he might not score a touchdown, but hopefully he gets a lot of carries and maybe some targets to sort of make up for that. The Packer run defense has not been good all year long. They're giving up the second most fantasy points per game to the position. They've given up 11 rushing touchdowns to the position. They've given up 4 receiving touchdowns. And even with Mitch Trubisky back, you got to think they want to get Montgomery involved. So I do expect a pretty heavy workload for him this week.
Yeah, and there's a pretty big revenge game element in this too with the tight end position. No, not Jimmy Graham. I'm talking about the reverse revenge with Robert Tonyan. You see, Jimmy Graham did not play very well for Aaron Rodgers, and you just know he is the petty type of person who's going to go out there and he's going to target Tonyan 80 times, and Tonyan is going to end up scoring 2 touchdowns because that's the person that Aaron Rodgers is. I know everybody loves him. I do not. So I'm already anticipating this, and this is actually why I'm streaming Tonyan in a bunch of places.
Never one to not paint A-Rod as this vindictive man. There's Rank. Let's get over to a couple potent offenses, MJD. Who we got?
Yeah, Brian Hill is a sleeper. I thought this was a great matchup for, obviously, Todd Gurley, what he'll be able to do. But as you can see there at the bottom, the Raiders are allowing the 4th most fantasy points per game to running back this season. And so if you had Todd Gurley, I'd go and pick up Brian Hill, very similar to the DeAndre Swift, Adrian Peterson role. Expect Brian Hill to get a lot of the carries and possibly have a big day.
I'll take a Falcon too, MJD. It's Calvin Ridley. If he plays, watch out. He's playing through that sprained foot recovery. I believe this is regardless of what happens with Julio Jones. If Julio's there, I think that helps Ridley. If he's not there, I think someone has to get the targets. I think the Raiders are going to apply points to the scoreboard liberally, so I do believe that the Falcons will need to throw the football. From there, we go to the Saints and the Broncos, Marcus.
I think you want to avoid Melvin Gordon in this one. His touches, his usage rates have been very inconsistent all throughout the season. On top of it, they're definitely not throwing him the football lately. Just 3 total targets over the past 3 weeks. On top of it, the matchup just not very good. Running backs against the Saints this year, only 4 of them have had more than 70 rushing yards, and the Saints have not allowed a touchdown to the position since week 4. This just looks like a bad deal all around for Melvin Gordon.
And on the NFL Fantasy Football Show, Marcus and I are screaming for more Phillip Lindsay, and we're screaming for you to start Taysom Hill this week. Obviously, huge surprise last week is that he threw for 233 yards. Like that kind of shocked me. I figured he was going to run for a touchdown. I thought he would have like right around 180 scrimmage yards. So he exceeded my expectations. Now he's going up against the Denver Broncos, who gave up a lot of rushing yards to Cam Newton a couple of weeks ago. And I can't help it. When I think of Denver, and Patrick, I know you hate when I make these obscure, like little trying to draw these narratives, but is this not a Tim Tebow type revenge game? Like this, it's the modern day Tebow in the place where Tebow played. How do we not do this?
Chiefs versus Bucks, Mahomes versus Brady, Andy Reid against Bill Belichick. It's must-see TV in Tampa this weekend. We're continuing our Sunday Showdown fantasy previews. Let's look at this matchup, MJD. What are we doing with it?
Listen, I'm thinking about starting Ronald Jones in this situation. Ronald Jones, to me, is a guy that, with the opportunity, gets better as the game goes on. I feel like against the Rams did an awesome job of shutting the run down, but the Buccaneers, if they want to have a chance against this high-flying offense, you have to try to keep Patrick Mahomes off the field. Ronald Jones, I think he's going to be the way to do it for the Buccaneers.
And as Ronald Jones slashes through that KC front 7, I'm having a hard time seeing Rob Gronkowski free himself for connections with Tom. Maybe you're hoping for a score and could try to compete with that, but Gronk had more targets against the Rams than he had in his past 4 games. Still could only muster around 4 points. KC is in the top third of the league against tight ends. I think you guys could go out there and find a better start than Gronk this week. From there, we go to the Niners and the Rams. Marcus, another week with a lot of turnover in the running back room.
A lot of turnover in the running back room, but I think this is a week you can start Raheem Mostert because part of that turnover is he is on track to play. He has been out for quite some time, but looks like he should be back on the field for the 49ers this week. I know the matchup is not particularly great on paper against the Rams, but this is a situation where you can count on volume and kind of believe in Kyle Shanahan, who has a very creative approach to the run game. That should be enough to open some things up for Mostert.
Mostert plug and play, but the Rams on the other side, who decided against running the ball a week ago, require some diving in to see what's going to happen. And I think this may be a Malcolm Brown game as a sleeper, much like the game against the Seahawks was a couple of weeks ago. Darrell Henderson is going to get the majority of the opportunities, but I think Brown might edge him in the scoring opportunities in the red zone this week. I think he's asleep. We just said it, Justin Herbert, a must start. So what about Josh Allen? What are we going to do with that, Florio?
I think both quarterbacks in this game are must-start options. Josh Allen, the last two games, has scored over 27 fantasy points in each. He's looking again like that first month of the season where we had him as a MVP candidate. He comes with such a safe floor. He has thrown multiple passing touchdowns in 8 of 10 games this year, and the Chargers have allowed the 6th most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. So I think in this high-scoring game, both of the quarterbacks this week, especially Josh Allen, are in play this week.
No, I agree with you, Michael, and I think that this is going to be one of those games similar to the Rams and Bills earlier this season. So that means I want as much of both offenses as possible. So I'm going to go with Mike Williams. Now, obviously, Keenan Allen, probably the wide receiver 1 on the season. If not, he's very close. Mike Williams has scored at least 13 fantasy points in 3 out of his last 4 games. He is their field stretcher. I anticipate them taking a couple of shots to him, especially early in this game, to try to set a tone against this Bills defense. So if you need a wide receiver, Mike Williams is certainly one I would look at.
Let's go over to the Cardinals and the Patriots. Marcus, what about Cam?
You are starting Cam absolutely this week. I know he's been sort of up and down this season, but it's a good matchup against the Arizona Cardinals. 7th most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. They've given up the 3rd most rushing yards to the position as well, which you would think, for a defense that gets to face Kyler Murray in practice, they would be okay against this, but apparently not. Cam is the Patriots' 2nd leading rusher behind Damian Harris, so I think he will find multiple ways to put fantasy points up on the board.
Yeah, I agree. I think Cam plays well against this defense also, Marcus. And I saw the 11-point projection for Chase Edmonds and thought maybe it was time to warn people about this. So beware Chase Edmonds looking back at New England against guys like Devin Singletary, Duke Johnson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire topped out at 12 points against New England. I just don't see it for Chase Edmonds. Maybe Drake gets his 13 to 15 points, but I don't think both of them can. So I'm going to go with beware Edmonds. From there, we go to Dolphins and the Jets, where Sam Darnold is expected to be back and ready to roll this week, Michael.
Yeah, and I have a deep sleeper here. It's Ty Johnson, and I know some of you may be saying, who? But last week when LaMichael Pirine went down, the Jets had Gore and Johnson split work, and it was Johnson that was used in the passing game. He had 6 targets and a 21% target share, and that is valuable because in PPR leagues, a running back target is 3 times as valuable as a running back carry. And if this is another game where the Jets are trailing, Sam Darnold likes to throw to running backs more than Joe Flacco. Maybe Ty Johnson could just rack up a couple of second-half catches. He's more of a deeper league play, but for those in need of a running back in deep leagues, Ty Johnson is a name for you.
Okay, when you're picking deep sleepers on the Jets, that means you want to stream the defense against them. And that's why I'm going to go and pick up the Dolphins this week. The Jets have allowed 10 fantasy points per game to defense and special teams. That's the most in the NFL. But as a small little caveat, the Dolphins also have the Bengals next week. So this is actually a 2-week play if you want to stream a defense. So go add the Miami Dolphins right now.
Back here on Fantasy Live with more Sunday Showdowns. As Teddy Bridgewater makes his return to Minnesota. MJD, you say it's a good week to start one of his wideouts.
Oh, yes, start DJ Moore. I love this matchup. I thought over the last couple of weeks he's been getting a ton of targets. So for me, it's about the volume that he'll get, but then the opportunity with the Vikings defense. They've allowed 17 touchdowns to receivers this season, 2nd most in the NFL. And this may be a great game. Some plays like this where you get a nice screen pass where you can take it to the house.
What you should really be doing is asking me if I'm going to be starting DJ Moore. 12:45 Eastern on Sunday, I will give the official announcement. Mike Davis, though, I will tell you right now that I'm going to be starting him. Christian McCaffrey is not expected to play in Week 12. He's averaged over 16 fantasy points per game when CMC is out. Great matchup against the Minnesota Vikings, who are Vino. Vikings in name only. They've allowed the 8th most rushing yards per game to running backs this season.
From there, we will go to the Texans and the Colts. Marcus, do we have a sleeper?
We do. It's Michael Pittman, although I may be underrating him by calling him a sleeper. He has been the Colts' best receiver over the last 3 weeks, leading the team in receiving yards in 3 straight contests. And he gets to face the Titans, who've given up the 2nd most catches to wide receivers, the 4th most yards. The rookie is starting to come alive at the right time. It could really help you out in your flex spot this week.
All right, for me, the past few weeks, as a person who relies heavily on Derrick Henry, I've seen multiple red zone opportunities go to Jonnu Smith. I want that action, even if he's not doing it between the 20s. I think he will be involved in the screen game more as well. Games that you can see on Game Pass, starting with Cleveland and Jacksonville. Let's get sleepy because there's action to be found on this Jags roster where Mike Glennon has said he has nothing to lose. Mike Glennon with nothing to lose. No Chris Conley, he's out. DJ Chark has a rib injury. Fire up Keelan Cole this week, because he's a Jags do-it-all man, and if Glennon truly has nothing to lose, if he truly believes that, he's going to have to target somebody.
I like it, Patrick. I think another sleeper in this game is Austin Hooper. He was playing well, scoring double-digit fantasy points in 3 straight games before he suffered from appendicitis, and he hasn't been able to get back on track yet. But that changes this week in a get-right game against the Jaguars, who've allowed the 6th most fantasy points per game to tight ends, including a league-high 8 touchdowns. And given the state of tight end right now, a touchdown is probably enough to make Austin Hooper a tight end 1 this week.
In our last Sunday showdown, the Giants against the Bengals, Cincy's first game ranked with Brandon Allen under center in 2020.
Yeah, and I would say for anybody who's hesitant about getting Tyler Boyd into your lineup, don't be. Last year, when Brandon Allen was the starter for the Denver Broncos, Courtland Sutton still continued to be a pretty viable fantasy option. And with a guy like Tyler Boyd, he's had double-digit fantasy points in 9 of 10 games this season. The Giants have allowed the 9th most receptions per game to wide receivers this year, so make sure that Boyd is in your lineup.
Yeah, Rake, and with that being said, I'm going to say sleeper A.J. Green. I just think, again, that they're starting to really get him going. He had 9 targets last week against the Washington football team. Let's see if he can keep it going here. The other thing is this. I got an opportunity to call Allen's games when he was with the Rams. He loves to get the ball out quick. He's comfortable in this system. Maybe A.J. Green is a guy that can score you a touchdown, 2 in the red zone playing fast.